You know you're in Italy when the flight attendant coming here still has to say there's no smoking on the flight, and you go to a conference and Marx has been mentioned like 5 times. So we're in Italy, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me. So let me just see here. My job description as a union consultant in one of the largest Danish unions that we have. It's a white-collar union with a broad spectrum of different workers into different areas. What I do for a living is I am working 100% on this agenda of freelancers, self-employed, gig workers, multi-jobbers. There was a new definition here. What was it called? Slashers? I've never heard slashers before, but yeah. But sounds good. I'll take that with me home. So what I do is I try to develop what we should have to offer these types of members. And I work on our political strategy in this area. I work on lobbyism in this area. I do our communication branding in the area. I am sort of the person that our local advisors call when they get questions they don't know what to answer to. And I do talks and workshops for our members and in places like this. So that's my job description. And you might say that we've had both these approaches today. There's one approach from the union side that sort of went, oh, this is unclean, all this self-employment. Let's make them into regular employees because that makes us feel wholesome. That's something that we know and can relate to. So that's like one approach that I regularly run into in this area. And the other approach that I regularly run into is this: yes, we're finally free. We have been slaves as employees, and now we've broken out of the prison and we can make our own choices. Hooray. And as always, the truth is always somewhere in between the extremes. That goes for my case. And I must say that it doesn't mean that I disagree with all the speakers who have a different approach. I just believe that this area is very complex. And there's no way to describe that atypical work is this. It's 1,000 things, and I represent something that more resembles this. This is a typical member of my union that has a typical profile, which means that they have a part-time job, and then they have a bit on the side. Or they have a period where they have a full-time job and then they jump off and get a great offer to join a project. Then they're self-employed for a period of time. Then they're back maybe for a few weeks in another position. They jump in and out of these statuses, which means that we can't box them in the way we would like to do because it makes it easier for us. This is the reality that we have to be able to comprehend as unions and be able to represent. What they need is, they still need legal advice. They still need advice on what to do when they start up as a business. They still need business advice from us, because when they try to get business advice from institutions that we have in Denmark for businesses, they're talking to people who are employing others and who needs to maybe have a huge loan in the bank to start out, and this is not the reality. The reality is they're just selling their own work. They're just selling their own hours, that's all. And sometimes the person buying their hours will employ them, and sometimes they won't. That's the reality. They need help to set prices. And before my esteemed colleague there, Thomas, who was on earlier, has a heart attack, this doesn't equal that we make pricing lists. This means that I tell them what they have to incorporate in their prices to have the same amount of money left when everything is paid for. Because of course, when you go solo, there are a lot of costs that you never think about. When I sit here speaking to you, I get a salary because I'm not volunteer. But my place of work has also insured me so that if something happens to me here in Firenze, I'm covered. And there are loads of costs apart from my salary. This is what you have to consider when you go freelance. And this is what people don't know. So that's my aim to sort of enable them to set their prices more realistically. Then we need advice on social protection. That's been mentioned all around, I think. They also need us to negotiate some good schemes for them for pension that they couldn't negotiate on their own, just one person. So that's also the negotiation part, which is a different collective agreement that we can do for the self-employed as well. Because I agree with Thomas that we can't make collective agreements for all of these people when they are self-employed. They also need political representation, so when we have new legislation, somebody is viewing the legislation with their eyes. That's my job. There's a bit of Danish there for you. We do have a few collective agreements covering freelance work, but that's for the type of freelancers that are really sort of short-term employees. Maybe they're employed for 5 hours, that kind of gig. So we have a collective agreement covering, for instance, graphic design. We also try to enter into dialogue with platform work. We have a platform in Denmark called Worksum. Worksum is a platform economic sort of broker where you can list as a graphic designer and try to get gigs. And we enter into dialogue with them, trying to get some kind of impact on what you have to accept to even have a profile on these sites, because they often stipulate very horrific conditions that you just have to understand, like we all do when we go on Facebook, and we don't really want to go, yes, I accept, but we have to, because otherwise we can't have a profile. That's the kind of thing we're trying to get an impact. And that's a new type of it's not a classic collective bargaining, but it's us as representatives trying to get an impact on these new types of businesses, to pull them in the right direction. We have a site called Freelancer DK, which is just filled with tools and guides and any kind of help towards freelancers. And so what we offer in short is we try to enter into any kind of collective bargaining, whether classical or non-classical. We provide them legal advice on their contracts. We don't write their contracts for them, but if they have a contract that they want our opinion of, we read it and we say, well, if you sign this, these are the consequences. Maybe you should try and see if you can get rid of that clause, or maybe you could, start over. We have a good, different solution to your contract problem. We do have debt collection, so if they don't get paid, we try to get money for them. And we have all these guides and templates for business development, marketing, pricing, all tools trying to help them how to navigate as freelancers. We do courses and workshops, we have networks, we do career counseling, we have the pension scheme, and we have counseling on what kind of insurance they have to have when they go solo. I believe that if we have to stay relevant for these types of members as well, then we have to rebrand and highlight that we are in fact crowdfunded. Before crowdfunding was a buzz, we were crowdfunded. We are owned by our members. We are a non-profit. And maybe we need to roll back and be more humble and tell the story of why we're here as unions, because that is not irrelevant in today's context. If you look at the buzzwords today, it's all about trust, it's all about sharing, It's all about building connections and networking, and we can be a frame for all those things, and then top it off with a lawyer, an advisor, a coach, a negotiator, an education fund, the job agent. We can do all these things on top of those buzzwords. And I think also we need to ensure that this whole gig economy is sort of steered into a new Nordic welfare model. I think they will have to adhere to that to be successful in the Danish contest. We also need to build stronger international relations, because we can enter into dialogue with a Danish platform like Worksome. It's much harder for us to enter into dialogue with Upwork or freelancers.com. So we need to build up to be able to do that. So in short, it's all about sharing knowledge. It's all about empowerment. And I think we can play definitely a role there as unions.